and that separates the log into workable sections for this next step that we're going to be showing you. Okay, now that we have us a pretty decent notch in there, we can go ahead and move on to the next step of the process. And that involves using an axe like this one. This here is called a broad axe, named such because the axe head is wider or broader than their felling axe, and it is specifically designed to be good at this part of the job. As you can see, when I hold it like so, it is completely flat and smooth on one side. That is to facilitate getting a nice clean cut so that you have a nice square beam at the end of it. Now if I hold it like this, you'll also notice that the handle angles up away from the axe head. That is a safety feature to prevent our hands from hitting the side of the log while we're hewing. So now that we know a bit about this axe, let's go ahead and put it to use and cut this section off of our log. There we go. So that is how they would have hewn their logs into square beams. Once they had their beams, they could then move on to the next part of the process, which is taking those beams and turning them into boards. As you can see from our workshop over there, the vast majority of the building material is boards and planks, which they would cut out of their beams using a tool like this one. This here is called a pit saw. It's 6 feet long and requires 2 individuals to operate. The one on top called the tillerman, and the one on bottom called the pitman. The tillerman doesn't have too much work to do as this thing only cuts on the downward stroke. So the tillerman is responsible for pulling the blade up after each cut and resetting it. Now the pitman is the one doing most of the work as they're the ones taking the handle at the bottom of the saw and pulling it down into the cut. In an 8 to 12 hour workday, they would get about 12 to 15 boards cut, which meant that it was a lot of work for a very slow payout. It would take them well over a week of effort in order to cut enough boards to build something like our workshop right there. That being said, we have somebody who wants to volunteer to be our pitman. No? It's okay, it's only a volunteer, it's not required.
I'll do it.
Alrighty, come on up.
I'm used to doing all the work.
Funny.
Alrighty. So we're going to slide it right into this notch over here to your right. There we go. Our goal is to keep this blade straight up and down the entire time we're cutting. Ready? Down, up. Good job. All right.
Yay.
Okay. We're going at a pretty good pace there. But even going at that pace, 2 individuals, it would take about 45 minutes to get through a 10-foot length of this log. So, I'm going to climb on down this ladder here. While I'm doing so, you can go ahead and think of any questions you might want to ask me once I'm down.
No.
Okay.
I have a question. As
Yes.
you get closer, did they slide the log out away from the stand?
So it depends on the situation. As the name implies, they would have usually preferred to have a pit involved with this process. Usually about 6 to 8 feet deep and a few feet shorter than what their beams were.
Yeah.
So they could just roll it over the top. If they're using a pit, they'd have a board kind of like that laying across the top of the pit where they could get about 2 to 3 saw lengths in before they would push it over the other edge of the pit and remove the board so you could just keep cutting. If They're up on stilts like this, which sometimes had to happen on rocky soil. They would do the same thing, cut 2 to 3 saw lengths in, and then they would push it back a little bit so you have 1 saw length, and then they would unscrew the bottom, lift it up, and slide it in back into the notch that they had already cut, and screw that back on, and then continue cutting. So that's how they would have worked around that with the pit saw there. Any other questions? Okay, so for our next demonstration, we're going to head on over to the sawmill where Travis, my other mill right here, will go ahead and show you how to cut things using the power of water.